India on Sunday slammed Pakistan for its attempt to accord provincial status to so-called Gilgit Baltistan, saying it is intended to camouflage the illegal occupation of the region by Islamabad. Spokesperson in the Ministry of External Affairs, Anurag Srivastava, said that India firmly rejects the attempt by Pakistan to bring material changes to a part of Indian territory which is under Islamabad's illegal and forcible occupation, and asked the neighboring country to immediately vacate such areas. Srivastava's response came following a media query about Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan's comments in Gilgit on Sunday about his government's decision to accord provisional provincial status to the Gilgit Baltistan region. In this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze Pakistan's bid to camouflage the illegal occupation of the region. Joining me on the program today are Vivek Karju, former ambassador, Sriram Chaulia, Foreign Affairs Analyst, and Arvind Gupta, Director, Vivekananda International Foundation. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Ambassador, let me begin the program with you first. Let's first try and understand and analyze what is it that Pakistan is trying to do in Gilgit Baltistan.
Pakistan occupation of the territories of Jammu and Kashmir and now Ladakh, the two union territories, is, as the Indian spokesperson rightly said, illegal and forcible. Now, it has for long wanted to ensure that this illegality has the fig leaf of the maintenance of the principles of what were the UN resolutions on Jammu and Kashmir. As far as India is concerned, those UN resolutions do not apply anymore. And correctly, the starting point for us is that the Union territories of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh are Indian territories, and they are part of the Indian Union, and the entire Indian territory is not confined to that which is under our control and administered by us, but also that which is under Pakistan's control. So, therefore, this illegality Pakistan is perpetuating. Now, the spokesperson was correct when he said that these administrative steps that they are taking are meant to camouflage this illegality, because they are trying to show that they are giving greater freedoms and given a greater constitutional status within their constitution to Gilgit Baltistan. But the fact of the matter is, to my mind, whatever they may do in that territory cannot take away from the illegality and the forcible nature of their control. And I think the government has done well to put this on record. So this right from 1947, when they, and it's a historical fact, along with some elements of the British armed forces, sponsored a coup against the then princely state of Jammu and Kashmir and occupied these territories, the illegality has continued. So it's been more than 7 decades that this illegality has continued. They can give it, to my mind, they can give it any shape and form. The fact of illegality will not go away.
Absolutely. All right. I think the ambassador has very rightly said that the occupation of Pakistan is illegal and that particular fact can never go away. So, Mr. Arvind Gupta, let me bring you into the picture now. You know, as far as the statement of Imran Khan is concerned, made on Sunday, you know, what about the timing of it? Why now?
That Gilgit Baltistan would become the 5th province of Pakistan. This has been long coming. There's been a lot of debate in Pakistan about it. And the constitutional status of Gilgit Baltistan There have been several earlier developments. Like in 2009, there was a Gilgit Baltistan self-governance and empowerment order. Then there was 2018, there was another order. Then the government had set up a committee under Sartaj Aziz, which basically looked into what would be the impact on Pakistan's stance on Jammu and Kashmir if Gilgit Baltistan is incorporated as a province. And of course, it has been there in the manifestos of the various parties, etc. And the assembly, so-called Assembly of Gilgit Baltistan, has been there since for a long time, 2009, when it was provided for. And this elections in 2015 now, on the 15th November. So this has been long coming. But Pakistan has always been, the issue has been raised, if they incorporate this into Pakistan as fifth province, then the case on Jammu and Kashmir will be weakened quite terribly. And this is exactly what will happen now. So Imran Khan was careful. When he announced this, he also said that keeping in mind the UN resolutions. Now, what does that mean? It means nothing, frankly. So, as Ambassador Karju said, illegality will continue, but incorporating that as the fifth province is also a part of their internal politics. And now it has been done, and PTI will try and take credit for that and try and win some seats in the forthcoming elections. But I think apart from the internal dynamic, there is also this very important strategic dynamic, which has become more complex, particularly after the Chinese have come into Gilgit Baltistan in a big way with the China-Pakistan economic corridor. And it has really made the situation highly complex. And the security situation for India also has become very complex. The government of India's reaction, which has come, which is strong and I think very valid and correct, is very similar to their reactions in the earlier instances when the various orders, etc., were passed and pertaining to Gilgit Baltistan. And of course, we have also referred in our statements to 1994 resolution of the Indian Parliament that this is a part of the entire POK is a part of the integral part of India. So that has been reiterated. But absolutely. I think the change that has happened is in the last few years when India is now much more forthcoming. And now we have, after the 370 revocation last year, and now with the Gilgit Baltistan becoming part of Pakistan soon, and China also becoming very interested in that area. And I think the geopolitics will now change quite significantly.
Absolutely. All right. Since we are here then, Sriram Chaulia, let's take this particular point of the CPEC going through Gilgit Baltistan forward. How much of an issue is it? Does it make things more complex for India?
Well, definitely, Frank, it used to be, seen as a bilateral conflict and mutual claims by both sides. But over time, China has muscled in into the picture. And in many ways, it's dictating terms now about the fate of Gilgit Baltistan, linking it up to Gwadar port in the Arabian Sea, and creating more pathways for Chinese goods and commerce and PLA soldiers to be able to move westwards and flank us on the western side. So there, Chinese military strategists are on record saying, we can put aircraft carriers on the west coast of India as and when we want. So if they are acting uppity on the eastern side, so in the Indo-Pacific, so I think there is a broader geopolitical dimension here, and the Chinese are obviously financing most of the infrastructure projects throughout Gilgit Baltistan, much to the dismay of the local people whose views and opinions have been completely disregarded and who have been crushed by the Pakistani military and by jihadist groups and Sunni fundamentalists. I mean, Frank, it's a fact that China is claiming, for example, Hunza, Skardu, these kind of places, Chinese propaganda is out there saying, look, like Tibet, like Xinjiang, these people are finally, getting economic benefits due to Chinese investments and the all-weather alliance between China and Pakistan. China is bankrolling all these initiatives. Even this provincial status declaration is clearly pushed by the Chinese, because they can get easier access to land and minerals and to all kinds of permissions if it is a province, because then they'll have other means of being able to influence it than it was earlier. So I think this is a part of a historic land grab and kind of ethnic cleansing and genocide that's been going on in Gilgit Baltistan. China is now complicit to that. What they did in Tibet and Xinjiang, they will want to do this again. And for us, think about it, they are coming southwards, because Ladakh is right next door to Gilgit Baltistan. And already we have this pressure from China on the eastern front of Ladakh. Now, through Gilgit Baltistan, there were thousands of PLA soldiers coming in the name of providing security to CPEC projects in Gilgit Baltistan, all the way up to Balochistan. So everywhere you have a Chinese shadow enveloping us. And I think we've got to be very clear about this. This is obviously illegal move by Pakistan, but we should also name China. And we should challenge what they are doing in these regions. And remember, there is a portion of Gilgit Baltistan which they used to call Shaksgam, or where the Chinese have built the Karakoram highway and have taken it over way back in the 1960s itself. So if you look at the map now, the entire Gilgit Baltistan is almost like a de facto Chinese province. They already have Karakoram highway and they're hemming us in on all directions. Sure. So it's very important that we need to have a breakout strategy and to challenge this, not only as a Pakistani skullduggery, which all of us are well aware of, but as ultimately being the handiwork or the mastermind behind this is China. And that needs to be pointed out.
Absolutely. All right. So, Ambassador, I'd like to hear your thoughts as well on this particular matter of China being far more, complex problem in the region than Pakistan.
Look, there is no doubt that the Chinese are moving towards us. They're moving westwards, based in China. And we've got to be very wary of these moves. They impinge on our security in a major way, and we simply can't look the other way. And I think the government is not looking the other way. And the Chinese involvement in this region began in 1963, when the Pakistanis ceded some territory in the Shaksgam Valley to the Chinese, with the caveat that the final resolution of these territories will depend on the final resolution of J&K. Now, all that was a lot of baloney. The fact is that the cementing of the Sino-Pak alliance, because it is an alliance, and from 1963 it's been an alliance, was on the basis of the secession of this territory. Now, independently, and I'm using the word deliberately, independently, within Pakistan itself, there has been a body of opinion that rights, quote unquote, have to be given to the people of Gilgit Baltistan, and they cannot be treated only through administrative measures. This has been a demand which has been there for a long, long time. There are other things too. It is believed that in 1972 in Simla, there was some kind of an understanding of turning the LOC into some kind of a border. And Zulfikar Ali Bhutto had indicated, now I'm saying that there's a belief that had indicated that he will try to amalgamate the territories under Pakistani control more closely into Pakistan, so that the LOC can be given a greater shape of a kind of a border. Now, that is a belief, and Bhutto never did it because of the fear that it would weaken Pakistan's case on J&K. Today, I think they find that it is very difficult to only treat Gilgit Baltistan as an administrative issue. So therefore, they've done all this. Now, this, to my mind, is separate from the fact that the Chinese are deeply involved in this territory. Because the fact is that whether it's a province or it is under direct control of Pakistan, it is a strategic issue for them, and they will simply not give the Gilgit Baltistan province the kind of space that the other four provinces have. So the Pakistani in control, that means the Pakistani military and federal control over Gilgit Baltistan will continue even when there is a province. So that's one issue. The other issue is that yes, the Chinese are being very, very active, and we've got to take countermeasures. Now, what will be the nature of the countermeasures? We've got to think very, very closely. And I'm using these words deliberately because let us not forget that at the end of the day, the Chinese, the Pakistanis, and we are nuclear powers. The Chinese have behaved terribly irresponsibly. And at least since April and May, when they've activated the line of actual control, and I do think that Indian think tanks and the government itself should project Chinese irresponsibility, because no responsible nuclear power ever tries to provoke another nuclear power on its territory or territory controlled by it.
Sure.
The Pakistanis do it through terror. Now the Chinese are doing it through the kind of activation of the LAC that they've done. And this is the point that we've got to profile very strongly, because the world must understand that China is not only aggressive, it is, but it is also being irresponsible. And
Absolutely.
the nuclear power with aspirations of being in not only in the same bracket, but superseding the United States one day and soon, should not be so irresponsible as the Chinese have been. At least no other nuclear power has been so irresponsible, whether it was the Soviet Union or the United States or the intermediate nuclear powers like France and the UK.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Points very well taken. So since we are here then, Mr. Gupta, what are India's options, or what should India do next?
I think there is one is the diplomatic aspect of it, and India should expose Pakistan's hypocrisy and duplicity on this UN resolutions, which is all outdated, and they keep on talking about this all the time. Very few people know in the world that they had come with some conditions which required their armed forces or their troops to have left. But so that's one part of it. But I think more important, and which brings in China, is really that you have to build your own capacities and capabilities. That is extremely important. And we have in the past been slow in doing that. But I think as some of our senior military people also said some time ago, they raised this scenario of a two-front situation. I think two-front situation is now materializing. And clearly, if it happens, then we have to rethink our whole preparation, the military preparation, the military doctrines, and everything else. And with the standoff on the LAC, which is almost now, it is now militarized. And to my mind, it seems unlikely that, those old formula of de-escalation and withdrawal, etc., will happen anytime soon. And it is very important that we build our capacities to hold that ourselves on both on the LOC as well as LAC simultaneously. And Shriram had brought in that issue of the maritime. I think the maritime aspect also needs to be brought in. So we should look at the situation in a holistic manner. The geostrategy it goes beyond just Gilgit Baltistan, and your capacity and capabilities need to be built, and built very quickly and fast. And of course, I think it is also important to have dialogue with like-minded countries although we should be very clear in our mind that all we have to do, whatever we have to do is by ourselves. But it is no harm having friends and people who understand your viewpoint. So I think that diplomatically we have to be more active, as well as militarily we have to build our capacities.
Sure, certainly. All right. So, Sriram Chaulia, as far as this issue of Pak's claim over Jammu and Kashmir is concerned, a couple of panelists raised that particular issue, but we didn't delve deep into it. As far as that particular aspect is concerned, is Pakistan slowly and surely trying to give up its claim over Jammu and Kashmir?
Well, it's very weak right now. I mean, there's no question about it. They, cried hoarse over the Article 370 abolition, but could not actually disturb the peace and the restoration of normalcy in Kashmir Valley. So they are frustrated. And I think they increasingly, as they move into the Chinese orbit, it's less about, Pakistan's own national will. I mean, they don't have the means to enforce it much against India anymore. And economically, it's so comatose and dependent on China. So I see them more like, as a dependent who's simply, following the diktats of Beijing. And I think so in many ways, how we deal with China will ultimately determine the fate of all these territories, including the Shaksgam Valley and Gilgit Baltistan. And I think the Quad and other means by which we are now countering them, that's good. But also in terms of the propaganda, a few years ago, Prime Minister Modi made a very, forthright call about Balochistan at Independence Day speech. You will remember that people in Balochistan appreciate India's support. And, we should do more radio programming, television programming, more online, promotion of what is happening inside Gilgit Baltistan in a big way. That is the way to ultimately, put their whole Kashmir propaganda to shame. Because even though they've given up pretty much, they cannot take the Kashmir Valley at all. They will continue to, make some noises in the UN and elsewhere. And try to always claim the upper hand in terms of moral, high ground against India. But the reality, what they're doing in Gilgit Baltistan, just for our viewers, until the partition and the Pakistani occupation of Gilgit Baltistan, 80% of that region was Shia Muslims, and Ismailis, Hazaras, and now it's hardly 37-38% is Shia. So what has happened in the intervening 70 years, and now the Chinese are also flooding in, is complete demographic takeover of that region and a kind of ethnic cleansing and genocide. And China and Pakistan work hand in glove because both of them understand the same language. What China did in Tibet, what they did in Xinjiang, they want to also Pakistan do in Gilgit Baltistan. So I think we should actually go on the offensive in terms of information warfare on this matter. Many people don't know about Gilgit Baltistan. Most people think there is a bilateral dispute of Kashmir between India and Pakistan, and many people don't know the China angle. So I think we need to round it. And like Ambassador Kajju was saying, we should put out catchy but convincing symbols. We have satellite imagery of the jihadist camps in the POK and also Gilgit Baltistan. They have infiltrated the entire region, flooded it with jihadists and Taliban and Sipahi Sahiba and all these extreme fundamentalist groups that have been killing Shias mercilessly in that region. You saw what happened in Karachi recently, Frank. Thousands of people rallied saying Shias are kafir and we will kill them. So this is the kind of mindset that's happening inside Pakistan. Gilgit Baltistan is one of the worst sufferers of this majoritarian hatred. So when they claim that India is becoming a Hindu fundamentalist and all that, which is not at all true, we need to, hit back in the same coin and let the world know the reality of who is making this accusation against India. So it's very important that the propaganda and the promotion of information and covert ways of spreading the word around, that is something we need to invest in a lot more.
Points taken. Quick closing comments now from all my panelists with the best way forward. I've got about 2 minutes left, so I'm going to ask my panelists to be brief, starting first with the Ambassador.
Look, I have no doubt that we should expose Pakistan for what it has been doing, including demographic change in Gilgit Baltistan. But with the caveat that on UN resolutions, our position, which is sound is that they've been overtaken by history. I don't think it will be prudent on our part to enter into a debate on UN resolutions. The world knows that they are history, and no one really wants to invoke them. By the same token, while we've done well to put our view on the constitutional changes which the Pakistanis want to make with regard to GB, my own feeling is that whereas the world would be seriously interested in knowing what is the actual position on the ground in this area, the constitutional changes that they have made will not evoke much of a response.
Absolutely. All right. Sure.
That is my feeling. Just as, one last word, just as the Pakistanis have failed completely in rousing any international opinion on the constitutional changes in the state of Jammu and Kashmir, which happened on August 5th last year. The world has not been taken in by Pakistani propaganda. We should look seriously at what Pakistan has suffered there before we want to focus more on these constitutional changes. I think the government will not fall in that Pakistani trap.
Mr. Gupta.
Yeah, I think we should do a careful assessment of what the combined China-Pakistan can do to India, what kind of impact it will have on India's security. The diplomatic approaches which Mazruk Arju has said are very sound. But at the same time, I think they have to be backed by a military capability as well. So we need to spend more on defense, and we should look at all our war-fighting doctrines, etc. We are, of course, defensive. We are always defensive, and one doesn't have to sound aggressive, etc. But in order to defend your sovereignty, you have to take all actions. And I think that will require a big change in our military strategy also.
Absolutely. And Sriram Shaulia, quick closing comment from you.
Frank, we are mounting a serious resistance to